And we should be live. Right, we should be live. I'm just gonna give it a minute until I can see that you are indeed in the chat. Welcome everyone. We are live from London. And we've got about 10 minutes before to start. We're just waiting for everyone to connect. So if any of you are watching this on replay in the next few days or weeks or years, if you wanted to skip the hellos and go straight into the walking tour, feel free to skip the next 10 minutes. Let me know in the chat if you can hear me properly. Perfect. Thank you, Tish. Perfect timing. Yes, I am indeed hiding in a telephone booth. It's a bit drizzling, so I just set up everything in there because, you know, it's quite nice to be in a dry place to plug in all the cables and all that. We are gonna have to go on brave the rain, but I don't think it's too bad anymore. Your new coat. Hi, Linda. Pink singing llama. And welcome, honey. Nice to see you here. So we've got about 10 minutes to go. Yeah, it's actually, let me flip the camera around. I think this telephone booth is actually working, you know. That's rare. Look, there's actually some electricity and everything. They don't seem to, that's a sweet graffiti. I don't know who to call, but that's sweet. They don't seem to be taking cash anymore. So I think it's a weird one. You've got to call BT and then pay with a card or something. But, you know, it's working. And it smells good. Sometimes they smell a bit like, you know, public toilets. So, yeah. I don't know where the number is, because you could also try to ring me, but I don't see the number anywhere. Usually they have a number that you can receive calls from. Hi, Shaz. Welcome. Hi, Mark. I didn't see you, but I see people saying hello. And Matthew is here. Welcome, Matthew. And it is a telephone booth with a view. Look. You can see the iconic Battersea power station. It's getting a bit cold. It's windy in here because we've got those little, see, it's a broken window. Right, let me show you my face for now. We still have a few minutes before to start. A real old-fashioned one, yes. Well, we still have quite a few, but very they're rarely open because, well, especially in central London, because a lot of people use them as public toilets, so some of them has been sealed now, so it's quite cool to find one you can actually get into. Let me see, 7 minutes to go. If any of you were completely new to me in the chat, let us know in the chat. This is interactive, so feel free to introduce yourself to the community. We still have about 6 minutes to get to know each other before we officially start. So tonight we are heading into Pimlico, Victoria and Belgravia. Press the coins return and see if there's anything in there. Ooh, that's a good idea, Mark. Oh no, it's stuck. It's been sealed in because I think they've not been taking any coins for a while, so. But that's a good idea. If anything had been there, I should have had to give you a commission. So tonight I've got quite a few dark tales for you. 5 murders. Well, 5 human murders and 1 pet. So that should be called a peticide. Because, you know, we've got regicide, matricide, infanticide, patricide as well. To kill your father, it's a patricide. So we should have a peticide as well. Although that probably sounds a bit too close to pesticide. Hmm. And welcome everyone that just joined. I see the numbers going. Yeah, sadly there's a, well, actually, you know what? That's the little detail, the pet murder, that makes me have some fairly strong opinions on a very notorious murder case that we'll talk about in a moment. Because I think if anyone is able to kill a pet, they're able to do anything. So yeah, never trust anyone that is somehow capable of doing those things. Five minutes to go. I'm actually a bit freezing. I have to keep my vest open, you see, my jacket, because the microphone wouldn't attach to the fabric, so I've got to have it open. But it is February. That is to be expected. Hi Bronwyn, nice to see you here. Oh, wow. Yeah. Hi, Joanne. Exactly. Usually a getaway for serial killers. Did you see the documentary? What is it called? It was online a few years back. This community online that went to great lengths to find a cat killer in Canada. What was it called? And he was actually going to become a serial killer. Don't mess with cats or something like that. It was a crazy story, and a lot of people didn't care. I mean, the authorities didn't care, but this community online, they did everything they possibly could to identify because the guy was posting videos on the internet, a proper psychopath. Yes, Caroline. Well, if that story is true, because, well, we'll get to that in a moment, but the kitten murder is not very well documented, so it could have been based on hearsay, but I'll tell you once we get to that. Hi, Mitzi. So we've got 2 minutes to go. And you know what? Let me get out of here already. Let's see if we need the umbrella. Hopefully not, because it's a bit windy as well. Oh, yes, we do. Oh, let me check. Yeah, it's raining. I'm going to have to get the umbrella out. Bear with me 1 second. No, I was hoping it would stop just for an hour or so we could dodge the rain, but sadly not. Up. There we go. Ooh, hold on. There we go. We are all set. Oh, it's always a bit annoying when you have the rain as well as the wind. Hi, Destiny Land Adventures. Welcome. And welcome, Mike. Welcome, everyone that just joined. We've got about 1 minute to go before we officially get started. So this is the beautiful Battersea power station. Let me check the time. Yeah, 1 minute. You might see a bit of lights at the bottom. They have a little light festival at the moment at the power station. Some of you might have seen it. I've posted a little short on YouTube about the festival. I'd like to take you back there live one day, but last time I did, the signal wasn't great. And you know, it's a bit stressful when you're streaming and the signal is not good, because you don't know what people have heard of or not, and sometimes you lose your train of thoughts. So I should try again, but it's always a nightmare when the signal is not with you. And it should be time to start. Let me check. Oops. Yes, it is. Welcome, guys. It is officially time to start. It's 9:30 p.m. UK time, of course. And let's go. Oh, sorry, I'm flying away already with the umbrella. Hopefully that'll be a bit better as we get away from the river. So, and I've got a double tier umbrella, so there's actually a little gap in the middle, so it shouldn't really fly off because the wind is technically able to go through. But hopefully, as soon as we go down the streets, it should be a little bit better. Anyway, Pimlico, it's an interesting place because you can see to the left here you've got some council estate, and all the way to the right of the screen there, that's the Dolphin Square building. It's an extremely posh and notorious location with a lot of very famous residents, including Princess Anne. She lived in there at some point. You also had a few spies, and you also had what's her name, Christine Keeler, you know, the lady that famously had an affair, you know, the Profumo scandal, when she was having an affair with John Profumo, as well as a Soviet spy. So that's a very prestigious and notorious address, very expensive, just meters away from a council block. That's the amazing thing about London, it's that it's not too segregated, you know, in terms of housing. Anyway, let me cross over. Exactly, the Profumo scandal. There we go. Now it's a bit less windy. So on this very street here, there was an interesting murder mystery. If you decide to believe it is indeed a murder, bear with me, there we go. If you decide to think it is a murder, I don't have any conviction myself, but I'll tell you the story. Let me show you. Hi, Tariq. It's the story of a French lady, Adelaide Bartlett. She was a young lady that came from. She came from France, really. Her dad was a famous aristocrat, allegedly a friend of Queen Victoria. His name is, buckle up, because it's a bit long, so buckle up, Adolphe Collot de Thouars d'Escurey. And her dad had died fairly early on, and so did her mother. So she moved into London with an aunt. And people said she was French. Her mother was British anyway, so technically she was British. But let me remove the photo. Sorry, I'm a bit slow because it's difficult, the photos with the umbrella. There we go. They would have lived at number 85 here. That was probably at the other on the other side of the street, but the building is no longer there. So I'll show you those ones. It would have looked very similar to those ones. First, she actually lived in Hoxton, and she met a guy called Fred, and then she met her brother Edwin. And Edwin Bartlett was fairly wealthy. He had a few grocery stores in South London, in Herne Hill, and the pair decided to get married. And that was a bit of a strange relationship. From the outside, everything was fine. Edwin's brother was maybe a little bit too close to Adelaide, and actually they very, very probably did have an affair. What happened is, at some point, Adelaide went away from her husband. She had been away from her husband for a long time, because when they first married, they both agreed that she wanted to get a bit more of an education, because her education had been fractured when she moved, from France to England and back to France and then England. So the first years of their marriage, anyway, she was getting educated in Stoke Newington and then in Belgium. So then finally they moved in together. But at some point, she asked to go for a quick holiday at her aunt place. Edwin was like, yeah, fine. And then she came back, and then she wanted to go straight back. And the dad realized that Edwin's brother, Fred, was also missing at the very same time. So they realized that she had had an affair with her husband's brother. So obviously the husband's dad was not impressed. And the brother Fred moved to America, and then they went back to have a semi-normal married life. It was a weird life, because according to what she later told the police, their relationship was platonic. They had agreed to that, and well, she did get pregnant at some point, but she said it was the only time. And sadly, at the moment of giving birth, there was a nurse there, but it didn't go down very well. And Edwin refused to call a doctor. He did not want a man interfering with his wife. Sadly, when he finally called the doctor, it was too late. They lost the baby. And she swore she would never have a baby again. She did not want to get pregnant again. So their relationship was platonic. This is the back of Dolphin Square, by the way. And it was said to be platonic, but later on, after his passing, they actually found some condoms in his possession, so it probably wasn't that platonic. We do know that she was probably into what today we would call being polyamorous. She was following a doctor called Dr. I'm struggling with called Dr. Low Nichols. That was a doctor that was writing about free love and hydrotherapy, and she had actually bought one of his books to send to one of her friends. And the friend's wife sent it back to her because, it was way too much for polite Victorian society. So she probably was having some extramarital relationships. And at that point, they're not moving here quite yet. They had moved to Pimlico only in 1885. But they were living first in Herne Hill, where her husband had some shops. Then they moved out because the husband's dad lived with them and she wanted to get away from the dad. So they moved to Dulwich and eventually they moved to Wimbledon. In Wimbledon, in their church, the vicar was a man called Dyson, George Dyson. And somehow, sorry, I'm flying away. Somehow the couple decided that it was a very good idea if Dyson was going to come to visit them to tutor Adelaide. So she wanted some lessons in Latin and all that. So the priest was paid. Sorry, sorry, you probably don't see, but my umbrella is literally flying away behind me. There we go. I do apologize if it comes into the frame. So they decided that Dyson, the priest, should come and teach Adelaide at their place. He was being paid by Edwin, so he would come and visit like twice a week. They'll spend the full day together, and their relationship was probably very close. Apparently, some of the some of the staff quite a few times entered the room and found them in an unusual position, let's say. Not talking about sex, but like with her resting her head on his laps and stuff like that. And Dyson had actually sent her a letter, a poem that was quite clearly a love poem, and it's funny to imagine because actually Edwin, the husband, was very much okay with it. And we know that for a fact because even if he's dead, he's not there to witness anything, we do have a letter that he sent. So the husband sent the letter to the priest saying, "Oh, thank you very much for this lovely letter that you sent my wife. It's amazing." The letter was a love poem. So he was kind of pushing them into getting together. But, some people have weird fantasies, so why not? Anyway, let me flip this camera around. This is a school now, but you see it's quite large. They have a lot of open space. This is because it was a bomb site through the Second World War. When we think about the Blitz, we often think about the East End and stuff. But Westminster was also bombed, and that's why the site of the modern school is quite large. And talking about schools, I'm just going to cross over so you can see a bit better. There's a little kindergarten here. That is where Lady Diana used to teach. At the time, she was like a teaching assistant at the time when she got engaged to Prince Charles. She had to quit her job eventually because the paparazzis were waiting there all day and there was no point, It actually says on the little bench, it says Lady Diana. That's quite sweet. It's still a little kindergarten today. And the church here, it's St. Saviour's. It's Victorian, 1864, if I remember right. And let me show you the little triangle here before we get back into the story of Adelaide. It's actually called the Pimlico Mystery, the story of Adelaide. Now you've got two interesting little buildings here. This, the green one, it's of course a cab shelter, but let me cross over. Oops. See this little thing there in the middle of the square? That's actually a ventilation shaft for the underground, the Victorian underground that was under this. So that's how the ventilation was done. Oh, you went to school in Westminster? Oh, cool. And a tea hut, yes, exactly, Tish. So for those of you that follow my tours quite often, I'm sure you're familiar with the story of those tea huts. For those of you that don't, let me tell you anyway. We still have 13 of those in London. They're quite cool. This one is still open. I believe it's still a little cafe today. To tell you how they got created, the story behind them is that, back in the day, back in Victorian times, the taxi drivers, they were on horse and carriages. And they used to get very cold and very wet, because the customers would be sheltered, but the poor coachmen, they were exposed to the elements. So they used to get a bit cold, and very often, hi Sandrine, hi Patricia, well, oops, sorry, I'm just flying away again. So yeah, every time they had no customers, they used to hide in a pub. But that was actually quite tricky because first, to go into a pub, they'll have to find someone on the street to pay them to look after their horses. And so that would cost them a bit of money. Then once they were in the pub, very often the pub owners were like, "No, mate, if you want to use my shelter, you have to buy yourself a drink." And then obviously we had a bit of an issue with a lot of coachmen on the streets of London that were a bit drunk. So there was a a philanthropist, a few philanthropists together actually, but the main one was Lord Shaftesbury. Shaftesbury decided to create those little tea huts. They were exclusively for the cab drivers. So you could attach your horses outside, keep an eye on them, and then go in to be warmed and dry, and have a cup of coffee or food. No alcohol. Oh, sorry, I'm just struggling here. No. It's the worst. The rain is okay, the wind is okay, but when you have the wind and the rain in the same time, it's very difficult. By the way, if you hear any wind noises, do let me know, because that could be that my microphone is not plugged properly, because they've got those little connections. So do let me know if that happens, because I should have a good microphone. You shouldn't be able to hear the wind. Anyway, so yeah, those little cab shelters, they were created for that. Most of them are now closed, but they are the few that we still have left. They are listed, so they're part of the heritage. We're not allowed to remove them. Some of them are in a very awkward position, but that's quite cool. Anyway, let's get back to Adelaide and the priest. That's an illustration of her. So she was getting very close to Dyson. Her husband, poor Edwin, he was unwell, or at least he believed to be unwell. He had a doctor, Dr. Leach, that was very often visiting him, and he had come to the conclusion that Edwin was a little bit hypochondriac. He believed he was suffering from a terminal illness, and that he was going to die soon. In his will, originally it stated that Adelaide would get all the money if she did not remarry. So providing she didn't remarry, she'll get everything, but she was not allowed to remarry. It seems a bit weird today, but at the time it was quite common. But Adelaide complained, and he had actually edited his will. And would you believe he actually kind of stated that he wanted her to marry Dyson? So that was a bit odd. And well, there was nothing deeply wrong about his general health, but he had some rotting teeth. He had seen a bad dentist, those Victorian dentists. You don't really want to go to see them. He had some rotting teeth because they had kind of scaled down all their teeth down to the gum level to fix some dentures on top of that. But they didn't remove the roots, so the roots were basically rotting. He probably had a terrible breath. And he was very unwell because of that. The doctor, Dr. Leach, that was following him, also stated at some point that he was poisoned by mercury. And he believed at that point that Edwin probably thought he had syphilis, and he would have taken mercury to cure that. Now, Edwin did not have syphilis. We can fairly assume that she probably already had tried poisoning him with mercury at the time. It's hard to know. And so what we do know is that around Christmas time, she refused his dad would come and visit. She hated his dad, and she sent him some letters saying that he couldn't come and visit. That would make Edwin too tired, and the doctor doesn't want to, and blah, 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 which is a bit rough, for Christmas time. And on the 31st of December, so New Year's Eve, that day, Edwin had gone to the dentist with Adelaide. I mean, Adelaide was nursing him quite well. There's one thing no one can argue, is that she was really behaving like a loving wife and nursing him and all that. That day she came with him to the dentist. She was actually a bit over the top, She told the dentist, "Oh, I wish we were not married so I could marry him all over again." So sweet. That's a cool car. And they came back from the dentist. Edwin actually arranged to have a haddock cooked the next morning for breakfast. I know, who has haddock for breakfast? Anyway, so he arranged the haddock to be cooked. They They were not seen or heard from after 11 that night. And in the morning, Adelaide woke up at his foot. She used to apparently often sleep at his feet for some reason, because she was massaging him or whatever, and she would fall asleep at the foot of the bed. And he's freezing cold. She's like, crap. And apparently she grabbed half a pint of brandy to force it down his throat to try to revive him. Now that's really odd. I mean, at the time it was something they'll do. They'll often give you a shot of brandy to try to revive you, but half a pint down his throat when the guy is already cold, it's a bit odd. And then she ran to tell the landlord, and the landlord called the doctor, of course. At that point, she's not behaving weirdly at all. She really behaves like a grieving, scared widow. Now, as soon as the doctor and the landlord entered the bedroom, both of them witnessed a very strong smell of chloroform. And there was no bottle of chloroform to be seen, but they could smell it. And the doctor told her there was gonna be a post-mortem. You know, it had to be, because this young man, he was, I think, 38 at that point, had no reason to die like this. And at that point, Adelaide is like, yeah, get it done as soon as you can. And it was 1st of January, you know, so it took a day before they could organize it. And on the 2nd of January, 4 doctors performed the autopsy. They couldn't find any obvious natural cause of death, but when they opened the stomach, there was a huge, very strong smell of chloroform coming out, and they found that he had been poisoned with a lot of chloroform. Now, it's actually very difficult to poison someone with chloroform. You know, some of you might remember we talked about the Bravo case when we were in West Norwood Cemetery. You know, it's you cannot really compare chloroform to antimony poisoning. You know, some poisons are fairly easy to slip into a glass, and you wouldn't taste them. You'd drink it. Chloroform, it would hurt. First, you'd smell it, but it hurts your throat. His mouth and throat were not burnt at all, which was really unusual, because he would have had to drink it extremely quickly to not get burned. And actually, the lining of his stomach was burned all along, kind of like if he had been horizontal, you know, like if he had been laying down as he drank it. So that was a little bit, even if she did poison him straight, it's hard, not everyone dies, you know, only 30% of the victims would actually die. So it's a very risky way to kill somebody. And they didn't have anything to frame Adelaide, really. But the priest, Dyson, was a bit worried, because he had actually bought some chloroform for her, 4 little bottles, just the week prior. Now, she had told him apparently that Edwin had regained his libido, and that she needed some chloroform to kind of put him to sleep, you know, to stop that. I know it's a bit odd, but some ladies did stuff like that at the time. We talked about that as well in the Bravo case. So Dyson had actually bought he went to 4 different pharmacies to buy 4 little bottles that he put together into one. So of course, the days after the murder, Dyson was a bit worried, you know. He confronted Adelaide a couple of times, and she was like, "No, I didn't do anything. Why don't you just accuse me straight away of murder?" And that was it, really. There was, of course, an inquest, but they didn't have enough to prove that she had done it. So she was acquitted, and she inherited the equivalent of about £600 today. We don't really know what happened with her. She potentially moved to Canada, but we don't really know. There's no it's not very well documented. And Dyson potentially also moved to America. there was a man that might have changed his name and might have actually killed his wife in New York. Some people believe it was Dyson. It's not proven, but there was an article that stated that he used to be called Dyson in the UK. So, you know, who knows? And even if she did it, how? There's actually a doctor that told the press a few weeks later, they said, now that she's been cleared and she cannot be trialed again, in the interest of science, she should tell us how she's done it. So it's because the thing she could have done is that she could have put some chloroform on a tissue, make him breathe the tissue to get him a bit doozy, a bit dopey, you know, and then make him drink in one go. One of the doctors actually had spotted that his tongue was a little bit white, and the mad doctor had actually himself drunk some chloroform to check if that would have that effect on his tongue, and it did. So yeah, it sounds very fishy. And you know, if it had happened in Scotland, that the verdict would have been not proven. But here we don't have this equivalent. So really, it's like everyone knew it was her, but there was no evidence. So so who knows? Anyway, the street straight ahead, it is Rochester Row. Some of you might remember because we talked about Rochester Row before. I'm not gonna go down all the way because I think the street have been renumbered anyway, so I don't even know which building it would have been. I think it was destroyed. But you might remember because we talked about that murder in Charing Cross. So what happened is we are this time we're jumping back to the beginning of the 20th century. It's 1927 to be precise. There was a gentleman that had jumped into a cab. He pulled off in front of Charing Cross station. He had a large trunk, a large suitcase in the boot of the cab, you know, one of those black cabs. So sorry, just flying off again. The cab driver actually helped him getting the trunk out of the car. And then the guy went into Charing Cross station. At the time at the station, you had those left luggage facilities, you know, those like kind of like a cloakroom. So he went to leave his luggage, he paid for it, he gave them a name, he got a little receipt with a number to come and collect it. Then he went out, jumped into a taxi again, and then someone on the pavement spotted a little ticket flying out of the taxi. So he picked it up. It was a cloakroom ticket. So the guy, whoever that was, had dropped his cloakroom ticket right out of the cab straight away. And somehow the gentleman on the pavement that collected it, he went to give it back to the cloakroom, and that was it. Days later, the suitcase is smelling very bad. So the staff at the cloakroom decided to call the police. The police came, of course. They opened the large suitcase, and they found the dismembered lady. Now, they had a body, they had a ticket with a fake name, but that was it. They didn't know where to start. They were able to identify the suitcase. They found a shop in Brixton that had sold it, but the guy had no idea who he sold it to. And then they found some pieces of items of clothing in the suitcase. Let me show you. One of them had those little tags. You know, we used to put those little tags on our clothing, and it read P. Holt. So the police started to search everywhere for a P. Holt, and indeed they found a Patricia Holt in Chelsea, but she was very much alive. So they did contact Patricia Holt and ask her if there was any way that someone could have nicked her underwear, because it seemed to be part of somebody's underwear. And Patricia Holt said, yeah, I have a servant that was a cook that has been dismissed. She was known as Mrs. Rolls, and the police looked everywhere for a Mrs. Rolls. They didn't find a Mrs. Rolls, but they found a lady called Minnie Bonatti that used to be known as Mrs. Rolls. She had gone back to the name of her husband, that was an Italian waiter, Bonatti, and she had fallen into hard times, she had fallen into prostitution, so she was selling her body around here on Victoria. And that was it. So they had the victim, but they didn't know how to get the guy. At that point, they decided to contact all the taxi drivers in London. My woolly underwear. Well, depending on the sources, some of them actually said it was used as a bit of a rag. So we don't know for sure whether it was her underwear. So they decided to contact all those taxi drivers. They are said to have an amazing memory, those black cabs. They have to take an exam called the Knowledge. The Knowledge was created in 1850. At the time, they had to know all the streets in a 6 miles radius of the Charing Cross. There was already a lot of streets at the time, but today we're talking about 30,000 streets. I mean, it's crazy. So they have a very good knowledge of London, and they are almost like tour guides, really. So that's why if you come to London and you have to take a taxi, do take a black cab. They can give you like a bit of a tour, really. Anyway, they are known for their memory. And that's exactly what happened. Not only did the taxi driver recognize the suitcase, but he was like, yeah, there was a gentleman, and I picked it up with the gentleman from 86 Rochester Row. So the police had an address. That wasn't quite enough, though, because they had the address, yes, but there were a few different offices and people living in that building. But then they found another piece of rag that had another tag, and it read Greyhound. They realized it was probably the Greyhound Hotel in Hammersmith. There was a Mrs. Robinson that worked there. And Mrs. Robinson was married to a Mr. Robinson. And he was an estate agent, and he had an office at number 86 Rochester Row. So they had their men. But although they had their men, no one recognized him. The guy that had picked up the ticket had a fair description of him, but he didn't recognize him. The guy in Brixton didn't really recognize him either. But when the police looked inside the office at number 86 Rochester Row, it had been thoroughly cleaned. But when they looked into the dustbin, there was a matchstick. And on the little piece of wood on the match itself, there was a drop of blood, and that's how they caught him. And finally, he admitted that he had met a sex worker in Victoria. Sorry, I'm just struggling again with the wind. He had met a sex worker, and he had at first he tried to claim it was an accident, that she had fallen down the stairs, but there were some traces of strangulation, so he was hanged. So that's how the amazing memories of those taxi drivers can help. Anyway, we are getting a bit closer to Victoria. So we'll go and take a quick look inside of the station. Why not? Victoria, it's a great hub in terms of transport. Not as busy as I imagined. I just asked Google AI, earlier today, and apparently it's only the 6th busiest station in London. I would have assumed a bit more, but maybe not. Number 1 is Liverpool Street. And Victoria has been quite well redone about 10 years ago now. It's because for many people it's the first impression of London. Because from Victoria you've got the Gatwick Express going straight down to Gatwick Airport. So a lot of people, their first image of London is Victoria. And you also have the coach station. So if you came from Europe on a coach, from Paris or Amsterdam or all those long distance coaches, you'll end up in Victoria as well at the coach station. So it's really very often the first impression you get of London. Do police still ask taxi drivers for murder clues? Tina, I think if there was a taxi involved in any way, yes, absolutely. Or if there could have been any type of witness, yeah. Well, actually, we might talk about that in the Lucan case as well. But the drivers on the taxis, they used to have the reputation of keeping very private about what happened and where they took people to, because really they were, all those fancy, those people that had their own drivers, or those fancy people or famous people that jump in a cab, they don't want their private life to be repeated. So they had the reputation to keep information. But of course, if it was in a police inquiry, they'll speak. Although it was not necessarily always the case at the time of the Lucan case. But we'll get to that in a moment. For now, let's have a quick look at Victoria. That's where they play Wicked. See the green light there? And behind it you've got where they play Hamilton as well. So it's a transport hub as well as a mini theatre land as well. And we'll go, just so you know, we'll try to go inside the station. Why not? I might be kicked out, so I'm gonna be semi-silent in the station, because I've noticed that the best way to be kicked out of places, it's to talk. When you're filming, if they see you filming, sometimes they look at you funny. They're like, oh, is she filming, is she not? But when you do live commentary, you get kicked out of everywhere. So we'll go in, but I'll try to zip it for a bit. But let's take the second door, because I want to show you we can see a bit of the Hamilton theatre as well as the Little Ben, because we have a little clock here that's a reproduction of Big Ben, but it's Little Ben. It's meant to represent the friendship with France. Let me show you. It's just around the corner. Actually, Little Ben used to be, so it's a clock, it used to be at French time. Well, in the summer, they wouldn't follow the GMT. They'll stay on GMT, so that was at French time. That was to represent the good relationships with France. But actually, everyone got confused, and we're so close to a train station, they had to stop doing that. Anyway. I'm gonna excuse my finger, but let me just show you Little Ben. Bear with me. I'm holding the umbrella with my neck. So straight ahead, that's Little Ben there. And behind it, you've got those amazing, very modern offices. So again, the contrast between the older theatre and the offices are quite cool. Let me flip this camera around to show you Victoria Station. So that's Victoria here. On the left, on the right hand side, that's the Grosvenor Hotel. So the Grosvenor family, we've spoke about them before in my tours. They are one of the wealthiest family in the country. The Duke of Westminster, his fortune is about 11 billions. The story of Pimlico, actually, it's interesting. It used to be marshland. It used to belong to the Manor of Ebury, and in I think in 1677, the heiress of the Manor of Ebury, she was a young lady called Mary Davis. She was 12 years old when she was married to the Duke of Westminster. At the time, it was fairly common. So that's how all this area of Pimlico and Belgravia ended up in the possession of the Duke of Westminster. Pimlico was actually sold off in the 50s, but Belgravia is still part of the. I think it's still part of the Grosvenor land. Anyway, I'm gonna be semi-silent for now. Would you believe they used to have a cinema in Victoria Station? We wouldn't think about it today, but back in the day, they used to go and watch a film as they were waiting for their trains. You actually, in the cinema, you had a little spot where you could see the timing, the train timing, so you could run out of the cinema and catch your train. They had one in Waterloo as well.
Surfaces may be slippery.
It's cool. The security is not looking at me funny, so we are all good. It's funny, the train stations in London, they're funny because I think everyone kind of thinks, oh, it's my station, you know, like I used to commute through here when I lived in Clapham Junction, but somehow it's millions of commuters that have history, you know, like, I mean, I've got lots of memories in the station, probably as millions of others. I've even worked in the station. When I first started guiding, I didn't have enough work in the winter, so I used to do those promotion jobs. So I was often in here giving free samples of different brands and different products. So it also feels like my office. But I'm sure millions of Londoners have millions of memories in each train station. Where do all the trains go? Well, the platforms ahead of me just now, they go towards Brighton and Clapham Junction. Most of them go, well, anywhere really south towards Sussex and southwest as well. Although you have a lot of southwest trains going from Waterloo as well. But yeah, anywhere south. Cool, and we are out and we've not been kicked out. Amazing. You never know in train stations. I understand why they don't really want people to film. Apparently they don't want people to film the busy times and the exit in case you were planning something terrible. I don't know when I said a T word, but you know what I mean. Anyway, here we are. Let me try to cross over. There's no, yes. Lovely. So we are now officially in Belgravia. And I'm sure a lot of you know exactly what murder case I want to tell you over here. It is, of course, the murder of Sandra Rivet. You might call it the Lucan case, but really, the murder victim, it is Sandra Rivet. So we shouldn't forget that. You know, we always talk about the mystery of Lord Lucan and Lord Lucan and Lord Lucan. Really, the victim is Sandra. So Lord Lucan was, or probably still is, if he is still alive, a lord, so an aristocrat from a wealthy family, a long line of aristocrats. By the way, this is the back of the Grosvenor Hotel there. They had the first ascending room in London. So an ascending room, that was of course a lift. Anyway, back to Lucan. So yeah, he was an aristocrat. He grew up here in Eaton Square actually. Through the Second World War, he was sent to America, you know, as an evacuee, but he went a bit further than most. He went into a very wealthy family in America, and then he came back. He actually had a job in banking, a good job, but he started to be a bit addicted to gambling. He studied at Eton, this very famous school, and he decided to leave his job. He actually decided to become a professional gambler. He was known as Lucky. His friend called him Lucky. It was actually quite ironic because he was not lucky. And he got married to Veronica, Lady Lucan. Sometimes he's described as some kind of a playboy. He wasn't really. He was more of a. He was not really a ladies' man. He was more of a man. Like he hanged around with his friends at the Claremont Club, gambling all night. Veronica, he apparently married her because she brought him good luck, would you believe? And also, he's a lord. He wants an heir, so he had to get married and have kids. But let me show you a photo of the two of them. Here they are. So this is Lord Lucan and Veronica. So she's quite a petite lady. I think she was like 5'1", so that's even shorter than me. That's important to remember because Sandra is much taller. Yes, there was Bronwyn. You might be talking about the one that just came out. There was a new BBC documentary that came out a couple of months ago about the case. It was actually one of the sons of Sandra. He didn't know he was Sandra's son for a while because he had been adopted. He discovered that in his 30s. His name is Neil. Well, he was actually named Gary originally, but his adoptive parents called him Neil. And he's made it his mission to find Lord Lucan. It probably became a bit of an obsession, really. And then they've been chasing someone in Australia. It's a very interesting documentary, and it's nice to have a bit of light on Sandra for once, instead of always focusing on Lucan. But it wasn't the man. I mean, it's the documentary is well done, but it was not the man. It was just another false alarm. Anyway, let me show you the name of the street. So we are on Lower Belgrave Street. So this is here on this street, I'll show you where in a moment, that Lord Lucan and Lady Lucan lived. They had 3 children. In 74, the oldest one was Frances. Frances was about 10 years old. And then you had little George and little Camilla. They were, I think, about 4 and 5. And the Lucan couple had split up. Veronica probably had some mental health issues. She did suffer from postnatal depression after each of the kids. In some of the documentaries or some of the books, they said that Lord Lucan was trying to get her in an asylum, to force her to go. He was trying to confuse people into thinking that she was insane. Personally, I don't think I buy that, because he started to talk about her mental health and try to help her, to get her treated for it in 1967. They split up in 1973. So if you wanted to fake someone's mental health issues, that's a long game. That's a very long game. So I think he was actually deeply concerned for her mental health. And did he exaggerate it to try to get the custody of the children? Most definitely. I mean, it was a dirty case. He accused her of being insane and incapable of taking care of the children. She accused him of sexual sadism. That was in court with everyone, with a judge and everyone. So it was a nasty case, and he had actually lost the custody at that point. At the time, in the 70s, most of the time, judges would give the custody to the mother anyway. So she got full custody of the kids, providing that she employed a nanny, full-time nanny. She actually went through a few nannies because she didn't get along with the first ones. And eventually she settled on Sandra Rivet. Let me show you Sandra. There she is. So we agree she doesn't look anything like Lady Lucan. She's taller. You know, there's a difference between a lady that is size 8 and a size 12. You know, I find it very hard to imagine they could have been confused. But anyway, one night, 7th of November, 1974, Lady Lucan is running down the street here. Well, I say running. She couldn't really run, sadly. She had been brutally attacked. And she was kind of trying to get herself into the pub, this little pub, the Plumber's Arm. At the time, it was nearly 10 p.m. There were only 8 people into the pub. It's a tiny pub. If you wanted to see the inside, I filmed a little short the other day. I published it on YouTube. If I remember, I'll put it in the description of this tour. They actually they're quite proud of the Lucan connection. They have the Lucan bitter, and they have a room upstairs that is the Lucan suite that you can rent. So she rushed into the pub. She's barefoot in her nightdress, full of blood. She crashed on the sofa, and she was telling everyone, "He's killed the nanny! He's killed the nanny!" So she claims that she had been watching TV upstairs with Sandra, the nanny, as well as the kids. The 2 little ones were already in bed. Francis was still awake. And eventually, the nanny, you'd have to know that she was not meant to be there. Sandra, she had a boyfriend. Well, she might have had a few, but she had a boyfriend called John that used to work at the pub, actually, the Plumber's Arm. But he had been moved to a different pub, and his days off had changed. So he had asked Sandra if she could swap her days off to go out with him on a Wednesday night. And that's why she was working on Thursday. Now, Lord Lucan would have known that Thursday was the night of Sandra Rivet, so he knew that his wife was meant to have been alone with the kids that night. Because we know that for sure, because little Frances had told him, the 10 years old. So he wouldn't have expected Sandra to be in there that night. And apparently, about 8:30, according to little Frances, the timing doesn't quite match between little Frances and Veronica. But Sandra went down to make some tea in the basement. So those basements, those homes are quite tall. You know, you've got like 4 floors. We don't know why she was making tea in the basement, because they had a kettle on the 2nd floor, but she went down to the basement, and eventually she didn't come back. So little Frances actually offered to go and check for Sandra, and Veronica said, "No, I'll go." And that's when, again, according to Veronica, the police took Veronica very, very seriously. They never really put into consideration, I mean, they did, but they did trust her. So according to Veronica, she started to go down to the basement to check on Sandra when she was brutally attacked in the hallway at the beginning of the staircases going down to the basement. She stated she had not stepped into the basement. And she was brutally attacked, a big blow on her head, and she was grabbed. And eventually the voice, the attacker, said, "Shut up." And she realized it was her husband, Lord Lucan. Now, it's this building here. So I'm going to show you, and I'm not going to stay too long into in front of the home, because, I don't want to be rude. But it's this one here, number 46. So you see where I'm standing now? I could indeed see into the basement, because Lucan claimed that he spotted a fight through the basement. So you can see people's feet, really. I'm actually getting goosebumps of staying here and seeing some feet in the basement. Anyway, so you do see quite well, but you see only feet, So yeah, according to Veronica, she realized it was her husband, Lord Lucan. They fought, and then she grabbed his balls. Then he let go of her. Eventually they went upstairs. I'm just going to move back because I don't want to be rude, like staring at their homes. So yeah, he let go of her, and and they went upstairs. They went into the bedroom. At that point, little Frances saw her daddy. So Lucan was in there for sure. She didn't notice any blood on him though. And so they went into the bedroom. Eventually, he started to relax. He gave her medicine and he went to the toilets. That's when she allegedly escaped and ran to the pub and raised the alarm. Then the police arrived. They found little Frances and the kids sleeping. Well, little Frances was awake, but the kids were sleeping. And then I'll tell you the sequence of events. But so if we are to believe Veronica, well, actually, if we are to believe Veronica, the timings are not that precise, and she doesn't really tell you what they spoke about in that bedroom for that long. But if we are to believe little Frances in terms of the timing, it lasted 45 minutes in that bedroom. What did they do? What did they speak about? She did later on in some interviews confess that she offered him to help him cover up, to save her head, to gain some time and to be able to escape. Personally, I think she probably did go downstairs and help him cover up, because she was found with some blood on her shoes, B and A type. I think A was Veronica, B was Sandra. So personally, I think she has been downstairs to help him. They had 45 minutes. What else did they do? How can you explain the blood on her shoes otherwise? I mean, you could see the blood falling out of him if he was indeed very bloody and dropping on her shoes, but on the sole of the shoes, and apparently, well, if you believe the little girl, he wasn't that bloody because she didn't notice blood on Daddy. One might argue that little Frances might have been a bit manipulated by the Lucan family. We don't know really, but yeah, according to the official version, the main version of the police, that night, Lucan wanted to get rid of his wife. There was nothing was broken. So whoever got in either had a key to the house or they were let in. If Veronica had a boyfriend, she might have just gone down to open the door for her boyfriend. And according to the kids, she did have a few boyfriends. There was rumors of a Norwegian boyfriend. There was rumor of a rich boyfriend. Why would the kids make that up? Unless maybe they are manipulated by the Lucan family again. We don't know. Now I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna be semi-silent because it's private. But when Lucan had moved out of the family home, so a year and a half before the murder, he moved down here into Eaton Row at number 5. So I'll show you where he used to live. This is one of those little stables. It's private, so I shouldn't really be here, but you see the lovely little building with the light? That is number 5. So that's where he would have lived after splitting up with Veronica. So he first lived here, and then he moved into a different address. I'll show you where. So let's go back. Hello. They are lovely, those little mews. Belgravia is, of course, ridiculously expensive. I don't know why. You know what? I don't know why. It's because it's nice, but it's a bit dull. When we have some areas in London that are very expensive, but that are nice, Oh, thanks ever so much, Linda. Now, a home like Lucan's, let me show you. That's across the street. It's number 33. Well, nearly 6 million. So that's quite a change. Well, a change. It was already very expensive at the time, but to give you an idea, I think I read that their home later on sold for 32,000. I mean, it was probably much more than today at the time, but it's still far less than it should have been. But of course, no one really wants to live in a murder home. Anyway, back to Lucan. So yeah, according to the police and to Veronica, it would have been mistaken identity. He would have wanted to kill his wife. He's got a motive. I mean, he definitely has a motive. He loved his kids very, very much, and he had lost custody. He was in debt, gambling debts, and having to pay for another home and stuff. He probably wanted to get his home back as well. And Veronica was not easy, he definitely has a motive. Was he the type of guy capable of killing someone in cold blood? According to his friends, no. According to his friends, he was very squeamish. He couldn't even face blood. He would faint on stuff. But who knows? So the official version from the police is that he wanted to kill his wife. He knew which night of the week his nanny wouldn't be there. He knew that she used to have tea about 9 p.m. So he knew she would come down to the kitchen. He had removed the light bulb so she couldn't turn the light on. So, in the dark, he would have accidentally. It was a violent attack, but the first blow could have killed her. So, it is possible, but personally, I think your wife. You know their smells, you know their size, you even know the sound of their footsteps. We all walk slightly differently. Personally, I find it hard to believe that it's a mistaken identity, but that's the official version. And to tell you the sequence of events, so Veronica is at the pub, then the police came in. Lucan probably went to knock at his friend's door a few doors down. I'll show you in a moment. He made a few phone calls. Very quickly after the attack, he called his mum, telling his mum to go and get the kids, that something horrible had happened and she had to go and get the kids. So he really deeply cared for his kids, And we don't know where those phone calls were made from. Did he go home at number 72 Elizabeth Street? That's where we're heading to now. Or did he visit another friend? We don't know. Then he jumped on his car. Well, not his car, a car that he had borrowed from his friend. That was an old Ford Corsair. He had borrowed it from his mate about 2 weeks earlier. One might argue that he probably did that to have a large boot to put a body, as he was already planning murder. Possibly not. He had become completely obsessed with Veronica and the kids, and he had been. Well, today we would definitely say, well, he was stalking them. He had paid a private detective. He used to hang around on the street, watching them through the windows. And he used to do that with his car, with his Mercedes. But obviously, Veronica would see him through the windows and she'd know straight away that it's him. So one can argue that he probably just borrowed the car to be a bit more incognito, with a little Ford to stalk his wife. He used to call them, apparently, according to John, Sandra's boyfriend. He used to ring them and he'd pretend to be someone else. And apparently Sandra had picked up the phone and he was just heavily breathing. He didn't say anything. And Sandra had said to him, "Fuck off, you know who you are." So he was literally harassing them. He was struggling with his drinking, with his gambling, and not being able to see his kids. One thing we know for sure is that he was a very good dad. He really, really loved his kids. We probably cannot say the same for Veronica. And we can say that for sure, because after the murder, Veronica, she didn't actually speak to her kids for 30 years. When she died, she took her own life in 2017. She didn't leave any money to her kids. She gave everything to Shelter, a homeless charity. So whatever broke down the relationship between her and her kids, it's not quite clear. It's probably due to her mental health issues, because she did have to go into a psychiatric institution after that. But some people are just not meant to be mothers or to be parents, So personally, I would give Lucan more credit when he was saying that she was not capable of looking after them. The official version is that he was trying to convince everyone that she was insane, and she, maybe, but there probably was some truth in it. And the very reason I'm telling you this, it's because of the pet murder. So apparently, according to one of his friends, so again, it's a story with only two witnesses, really. Well, the kids would have known as well. Lord Lucan had... I want to take the next one. What am I doing here? Lord Lucan had decided to kind of make peace with his... maybe not make peace, but come with a little gesture for the family. He had bought a little kitten to give to the kids 2 days before the murder. So he brought them a little kitten, and I'm guessing the kids loved the kitten. We don't know that for sure, but and a few hours later, through his letterbox around the corner there, I'll show you where, he received someone had posted the kitten dead. They had slaughtered the kitten. His throat was cut. And it had been posted through his letterbox. Now, of course, very quickly he suspected Veronica. Who else? Who else could have done it? And apparently there's another witness that's one of Veronica's friends. Years later, when she published her memoir, the lady was helping her publishing her memoir, or writing her memoir. And she stated that Veronica always felt very bad about the kitten story. So, if someone is capable of killing a kitten and posting them through a letterbox, I'm sorry, but that person is capable of anything. So personally, if it is true, again, we do not know whether that story is 100% true, but if it is true, and if Veronica has done it, I don't know what she's capable of. And according to one of his friends, it's actually what drove Lord Lucan crazy. That's the thing that really tipped him off, and that's probably that very day, so 2 days earlier, that he started to plot murder because of the dead kitten. So who knows? Again, there's a lot of hearsay. There's a lot of people that start to talk many years later. But if that kitten story is true, then I've got slightly less respect for Veronica. Anyway, we are on Eaton Square. You'll see a few blue plaques over here because a lot of very famous people have lived around here. A lot of politicians, of course. George Peabody actually lived on the other side. Peabody, we talked about him when we talked about Polly Nichols. He's the American millionaire that donated a huge amount of money to have those first social housing, really, the Peabody buildings. Anyway, so Veronica has also kind of changed her version slightly over the years. She did admit many years later that she could have been mistaken, that they could have been a second man. She had a huge blow on her head. Could she have been attacked by somebody else and then rescued or grabbed by her husband, and then she would have thought the husband is the attacker? It is actually completely possible, and that would be pretty much the story that Lucan said. So Lucan actually wrote a few letters to some of his friends. None of them sounded like a proper suicide letter, but he did say I don't care anymore and blah blah blah. So the sequence of events is that he makes a couple of phone calls from somewhere around here, probably, jump on his little Ford Corsair, and then he ended up in Uxfield in Sussex. He was trying to visit his friend Ian Maxwell Scott. Ian was away from home, so Susan opened the door. Susan Maxwell Scott. She was a friend of his as well. She potentially had a huge crush on him. According to the police at least, it seemed like she had a crush on him. And This is the door, by the way, number 72A. That's where Lucan moved. So he first lived at Eton Row, where we were earlier, and eventually moved here because it's a large home, and that's because he was hoping to win the custody battle to get his kids back. So he wanted a large home in case he would get his kids. So the letterbox with the kitten, I'm guessing it's this one here. And so yeah, he went to the Maxwell Scott's home, where he sent a couple of letters to his friends. He also called his mom again, and his story was that he was, well, what he allegedly told Susan, is that he was passing by number 46. If he was driving by, he wouldn't have been able to see in the basement. But if he was walking by, as we've seen earlier, we could see the feet of the lady, right? So he spotted a fight in the basement, and that he rushed in to help. He had the keys, he used to live there, and that's how he actually tried to help, and that's how he got into the building. And then he realized there was a lot of circumstantial evidence against him, and that's how he decided to run away. Now, according to Susan, that's all that happened. He came on visit. He told her the same story, that it was just terrible coincidences, and he posted a few letters. Now, Susan, she didn't come straight to the police, though. It's only a few days later, when his friends received the letters, the stamp on the letter said Uxfield. So that's how they went to see Susan Maxwell Scott, because they knew she lived there. So she didn't come to the police on her own. She claimed that she had not seen the news, she didn't know. Yeah, right. A lot of his friends were actually quite snobby with the police, really. But I think we probably would all do the same. I mean, if you have a friend of yours knocking at your door full of blood, well, you help them before to realize, unless you know what they've done, but first you trust your friends, So yeah. And some of Lucan's friends were actually kind of almost playing with the media, The boss of the Claremont was literally telling the press that he would have helped him, he would have harbored him and everything. He probably didn't, otherwise he wouldn't say so. And of course, you probably know the rest of the story. From that day, Lucan was never seen again. The next morning, his little Ford was found in New Haven, on the south coast. So that's of course a very convenient location, because it's a big port, so you could go on a ferry to France, to Dieppe. That's actually one of the main theories, that Lucan actually got on the ferry and jumped overboard. Personally, I find it hard to believe. Why would you get into a ferry to France to then jump overboard? I mean, if you are on the south coast, you can go to the Seven Sisters cliff and just jump off the cliff. If you are on a ferry, you're already almost abroad. Why would you, why not? His body was never found. Never. Some say that he might have had a sailboat, and maybe he already had a place where he wanted to get rid of Veronica's body if the plan had gone to plan. Because he had already put Sandra's body into a big sack, like a canvas sack. It was a US mail bag, actually. Maybe he was going to take it on a boat, and he had a special spot in the Soylent where he knew where to drop it, that the body would never found. And maybe he decided to jump in that very spot so they wouldn't find his body. But, who knows? Anyway, little pause in our story. We'll get back to Lucan in a moment. So, not to confuse you in any way, we're moving to a completely different story for a few minutes. Number 45 here. So we are now on the famous Chester Square, also a very, very fancy location. This is the site of another murder. Number 45 here used to belong to the King of Greece, George II. So that is the cousin of the Duke of Edinburgh, the Queen's husband, Prince Philip. And the King of Greece was never here. The King of Greece was in Greece, of course, but he had a in London, and the home had to be always ready for him. He could come and visit at any time. He had a lady, a staff here, Elizabeth McLinden. She was. Her job was just to keep the house clean and ready for the king whenever he wanted to visit. Elizabeth was quite a poor lady, originally from an Irish family, and she had always dreamt of marrying big. She wanted to marry into money, and not very successfully so far. And she got a job here. And she met Arthur Doyce, a man that was rich. Finally, she got a rich boy. He was actually not that rich. He was as poor as her, but she didn't know. He was a con artist and a criminal and a thief. And he was taking her out to amazing dinners and shopping trips, but he would use some checks that were bouncing checks. He didn't even know how to spell 100 properly. And he also had some deliveries here paid with those fake checks coming to number 45. And he actually had name dropped the name of George II, the King of Greece. So eventually, when those checks bounced, people started to chase the King of Greece, or his secretary. And so Elizabeth was already in trouble. She probably would have been sacked eventually because of the suspicion of theft. And one night, so we are in 1946, she was actually off that day. That was a day of celebration. That was 8th of June. They were celebrating the winning of the Second World War, a year later. So you had military parade and stuff. So the neighbor at number 46 down there, she actually spotted Elizabeth running with a boy running after her, going down towards Elizabeth Street. And then nothing. Then the next morning, the King of Greece decided to come and visit. He was not impressed. Not at all. Because the milk was still outside from the, those milk deliveries you had at the time. And inside was not particularly clean. He decided to fire Elizabeth to take another housekeeper. But they didn't actually go into her bedroom. It is only 6 days later that they started to wonder where she was. They went into Elizabeth's bedroom, and when they opened the door, the smell was absolutely horrendous. They found, she was sat on a chair like if she was at her desk, studying something, but she had actually been shot. She had a bullet that went through her neck and her jaw. It was fairly easy to find the guilty party because his ID was in there. So they caught Arthur and he was hanged. So that's another little dark story in Chester Square. Now let's go back to Lucan. I told you after he ran out of number 46, we don't really know where he's been. Well, we do know that he actually came here to number 51 to see a lady called Madeleine Floorman. Well, he probably wanted to see a husband, but we know now that he knocked at the door. Madeleine did not open because it was very late. She was a lady alone. Her husband was away, so she got scared and didn't open the door. Then she received a very cryptic phone call. She did not understand what they said, but she then believed that it might have been Lord Lucan. And the next morning, they found a lot of blood on the doorbell and on all that. So he probably did try to come and visit his friends here, but because they didn't open the door, he had to go somewhere else. The next day, some of his friends actually had a lunch. The police suspected that it might have been to plan his escape and stuff. It was a lunch at John Aspinall's house. He was the owner of the Claremont Club. It probably wasn't. They probably just met up to check what they'll do if he did turn up. As far as we know, he was never seen again, ever. There were a lot of rumors. Some people said that he might have been fed to a tiger. John Aspinall had a couple of zoos in Kent. Some said, of course, that he might have taken his own life, which is a very possible probability. But, and of course, some claim that he might have escaped. My favorite theory, and I think the one that makes the most sense, it's that he did not do it. He hired a hitman. He probably got crazy after the cat story, hired a hitman. That was not a very good one, because at 8:45, he was seen in front of the Claremont Club. He was driving his own car, and he said hello to the doorman, asking if his friends were inside. So he was probably giving himself an alibi. That was 8:45. Now, if we listen to Frances, the daughter, at that point, Sandra was already downstairs making the tea. So he couldn't possibly. It's between 7 and 12 minutes to drive from here to the Claremont. So he couldn't possibly have been here that quickly if we trust those timings. Again, witnesses, they can always be wrong with the timing. So he might have hired a hitman. That's why the hitman might have been wrong and target the wrong lady, because obviously they don't know them that well. And then Lucan might have lost his nerve and tried to rush to the house to try to stop it. Then that would explain why he rushed on Veronica. And according to Veronica, she said to him that he had killed the nanny. But again, I'm not sure we should trust Veronica. When you see my bicycle, it's pretty much the end of the tour. So, and you know what? Many years later, Susan Maxwell Scott, so the lady, the lady that he visited in Uxfield, the one that probably had a crush on him, she never said any more to the police. But apparently, there's a former nanny of hers, a staff, that claims that many years later, when she was living alone as a widow in Battersea, she had said to her that what Lucan really told her that night is that he had indeed hired a hitman, lost his nerve, and run to the place trying to stop it. So he was guilty and not guilty in the same time. And then he realized that there was just way too much evidence against him, so he ran away. So again, this is just hearsay. Is that staff saying the truth? Who knows? Let me show you another lovely little muse here. So those would have been the little muse for the staff and the coachman and all that, but beautiful little street. One other story that is only hearsay, but that's all we have at the moment, hearsay, or people that have known someone that know something, that did something. There's a gentleman that claims that his dad was a taxi driver, and that his dad had told him that very night he would have gone to pick up Lucan at Uxfield to Susan's house, and drove him into Kent next to an airfield. And that the very same driver the next morning was sent to get someone from New Haven back up to Uxfield. In that case, the car would have been planted in New Haven to make it look like Lucan might have gone on a ferry. So, that makes sense. If you drop your car by a port, people would think you're gone at sea. And then, you would have more time to go flying the other way. Poppy, we're talking about the Lord Lucan murder, yes. And, but we never know. There are so many theories. I'm personally, I think he would have been alive, maybe not for very long. Let's not forget, he was a heavy drinker and smoker. He would be in his 80s today. Would he be still alive today? I'm not sure. There was an interview of his brother, Hugh Bigham. He lived in South Africa at the time. Through the interview, you didn't say much, but allegedly, right after the interview, he had said that his brother had left, he had gone to India, but he had died in 2008. Again, why would the brother make that up, you know? There has been sighting all across the globe. It never stops. So the latest story was the guy they chased in Australia. But actually, no, the latest story, some of you might have seen it, that was 2 weeks ago. The Daily Mail claims, one of their journalists claims that they have chased a lady that was, she's a Filipino lady, she lives in Manila. She was once the wife of another rogue lord. He was, I think it's Lord Muhammad or Lord Mahomey, something like that. He was a dodgy character as well. He was wanted by the police in the UK. He probably would have met Lucan because they were in the Grenadier Guards together at the beginning of their military career. And he was dealing with fake passport. He had a lawyer in the UK that was producing fake passport. At the time, it was fairly easily done. They used to take the idea of a child that would have died and create a fake passport under their name. And allegedly, so that lady is still alive. She's been interviewed. She was a very young Filipino girl at the time. Now she's a bit older. She states that one day in the 90s, I think, or maybe late 80s, it was at least 10 years after the disappearance, that one day she was introduced to a guy called Richard Bigham. He came to collect a passport in Manila from his old friend. And personally, it's not that I don't want to give her much credit, but she did say Richard Bingham, that was his name, right? But everyone called him John. So he was actually Richard John Bingham. So I don't see why 10 years later his mate would introduce him as Richard. Richard looks like someone that has just been on Wikipedia to find the name. Allegedly, by the way, I'm showing you this building because Margaret Thatcher used to live here, the one with the scaffolding. So, yeah, allegedly she met Lucan. She didn't quite realize at the time, but it's only a few days later when she told her parents, and they were like, "Oh, you know, he's a murderer." That wouldn't have been surprising. I mean, that aristocrat knew a lot of outlaws that were hiding in Manila. At the time, he didn't have an extradition treaty with the Philippines, so that was a good place to hide for anyone that was wanted in the UK. And the guy with the fake passport is dead now, so you can't double check with him. Allegedly, I mean, there might be a follow-up on this one because that was 2 weeks ago. That very lady claims, again, it's a big claim. I don't believe it, but we'll see. She says, she looks very dead serious. She looks very nice, actually. But she says that night they were a bit drunk and that the alleged Lord Lucan cut a bit of his hair and gave it to her. And he said, they were joking, when you've been missing for 10 years, you might get a bit cocky, And apparently they said to her, you keep it, because you're the youngest one, because she was much younger than her husband, of course. Well, of course, we don't know, but, those rich men going to the Philippines. They apparently said to her, you keep it. One day you'll see, you'd find a good use for it. So if indeed she can produce this bit of hair, then they could do DNA testing, why not? So there might be a follow-up on this one, but personally, I doubt it. And if she's already met the journalist, why did she not come up with the lock of hair already, So it sounds a bit fishy to me, but, why not? Anyway, that's going to be the end of the tour. Let me know if you have any questions, in the chat before we go. I'm going to stand here because there's a bit of light. Down there, we're back on Lower Belgrade Street, by the way, straight ahead. So you see, if Lucan run from number 46 there to number 51 behind me, it's a very, very quick walk, really. And of course, now the rain has just stopped. Typical, just when you don't need it anymore, the rain has stopped. And the kids, of course, so Frances, George, and Camilla, they are still alive. George has been on TV because he's Lord Lucan now, because his dad has been officially declared dead, although we don't know. Camilla, she's a barrister, I think. And Frances, she's a bit more discreet. I tried to look her up. There are two authors called Frances Bigham. One of them is writing about London ghosts, and the other one, she's a lesbian historian. So whichever it is, I like her. But it might not be any of the above. But I think she doesn't want to be too much connected to the story. How far from central London? Well, Tina, we are in the borough of Westminster, so we are literally. I could walk from here to Parliament. Well, that's probably why you have so many politicians living here. You could walk it. Thank you, Sandrine. Thanks everyone for coming today. It's always a pleasure to have you along. And if you have any questions, do let me know in the chat. If any of you dropped me a little tip on buy me a coffee, on PayPal, thank you very much in advance. William is asking, where is Veronica buried? Oh, you know what? That's a very good question. I don't know if she's... I don't know whether she actually has a grave or if she was cremated. I don't know. Good question. If you find out, maybe we should go and visit her. And... so yeah, very interesting. I mean, it's probably been very, very difficult for those kids as well. I always find it fascinating what, especially little Frances, because she was a witness. Whatever she said would have had so much of an impact on the inquest and all that. It's probably a very tricky situation to find yourself in, and you probably spend the rest of your life thinking, do I really remember that? I always, yes, Laurie, they'll be still doing 3 more videos. I'm just a bit slow with the editing, but yeah. Yeah, I'm always fascinated by the kids that, like the McCain's kids, the Maddie McCain's little brother and sister, the twins. I'm always fascinated by what might have happened in the rest of their life, Actually, if I was going to write a drama, like a crime drama for Netflix, I would like to write about those kids, like you do a show, like 2 twins in their teens, like maybe 15 years old, based in Leicestershire. They've grown up in the shadow of the disappearance of their sister Madeleine. They always believed the official theory that she was abducted abroad by a PDF file. It's because I don't want to say the P word. So if I say PDF file, you know what I mean. The algorithms. So and maybe at the age of 15, with the growth of social media, they probably realized that everyone on the internet believed that their parents, Jerry and Kate McCain, were guilty, or at least they covered up for an accident. Imagine discovering that on the internet when you're a teenager. So yeah, well, I don't want to be a Netflix writer anyway, because I'll probably go down for libel if I did a show like that. Jerry and Kate McCain would definitely attack me. But yeah. Do I do London tours? Disa is asking. Yes, of course, yeah. If you want to see another London tour, next Sunday, we're going back to Spitalfield. So that'll be about Jack the Ripper, of course. So make sure you check that out. If any of you were completely new to me, if you want to make sure you follow those live and you see them when they are live rather than the replay in the next few days, the best way is to subscribe and then to hit the little notification bell. So you should get a notification when I go live, because it's much more fun to watch it live and be able to interact in the chat and all that. Cool. Thanks, Poppy. Thanks, Disa. Thanks, everyone, for coming tonight. Hopefully, I'll see some of you next Sunday. And you used to run past the Myken Street, Mike. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I suspect it's a fascinating story because, you know, Kate Myken stopped practicing medicine after the case. I suspect it's because she feels guilty of the drugs she might have given to the little one. But hey ho, I feel, you know, I mean, the life of those teenagers would be fascinating because you may have a lot of people that try to get close to them because they're fascinating by the case. So they might be in high school. Well, they're not anymore. They're probably 19 years old now. But, you know, you might have had those people trying to get to know them, maybe even date them, just because, like me, they're fascinating by the case and they would want to find out more or you know. I think that's probably the case for everyone living in the shadow of such a very public drama or event. You probably have all those people that want to get to know you just because they care about the case. Or maybe it's just me, I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to keep you much longer. Thank you for coming tonight. It's always great to have you along. Thank you for coming, Disa. Thank you, Barbara. Thanks, Tina. Thanks, everyone. And hopefully I'll see you next Sunday. If not, keep an eye on my channel and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.